It was the night the river carried more than water. It carried secrets, it carried love, it carried danger. Jason stood between his daddy's law and Claire's trembling hands, the firelight painting his face with fear and defiance. Folks say you could hear the chains of her father clanging in the dark, and the sheriff's voice cut sharper than any bullet. It was a night where truth wrestled with blood, and love stood taller than the badge. And from that moment on, nothing in that little town would ever be the same. The sun had just begun to sink behind the pine trees when Jason first saw Claire. She was sitting on the old wooden fence by the road, her dress brushing against the tall grass, her eyes following the slow crawl of the clouds. Jason stopped in his tracks, because there was something in her stillness that called to him, something soft but sharp, like a song you know by heart but never sang out loud. But Jason was the sheriff's boy, son of a man who carried the law like a badge on his chest and fire in his bones. Claire was the daughter of a man who had just walked out of the prison gates after 12 long years. Folks in town whispered when they saw her, the way people whisper when they know a name carries weight heavier than iron. Jason knew he should have kept walking. He knew his daddy would not take kindly to him looking at that girl, not even a little. But the heart? Oh, the heart. It don't follow fences or rules. It runs like a wild horse across the field. Jason lifted his hat, nodded at her, and for the first time, Claire smiled. That smile, quiet and trembling, was enough to set the whole story in motion. And like that, the son of the sheriff and the daughter of a man marked by prison began to walk a path that was bound to cross fire and shadow. Folks in town, Jason found himself walking down the road that led to Claire's house more often than he meant to. Sometimes he told himself it was just to see the sunset, sometimes to check the creek, but deep inside he knew it was her, always her. She had a way of sitting on the porch, humming songs no one else seemed to know, songs that sounded like sorrow and hope braided together. But Claire lived in a house heavy with silence. Her father, Tom, had just come home, his shoulders broad but bent, his face lined with stories nobody dared to ask. People crossed the street when they saw him. They said he was trouble before, and he'd be trouble again. Jason's daddy, Sheriff Bill, warned him over dinner. "That girl's kin is poison, boy. Stay clear." The words came down like iron nails, but Jason only nodded and kept quiet, because when he looked at Claire, he didn't see poison. He saw a girl who was lonely, a girl who carried a burden she never chose, a girl who wanted to breathe free. One evening, Jason sat with her under the willow by the river. The air was thick with fireflies, and Claire's voice was low. "Do you ever feel like folks already wrote your story before you got a chance to?" she asked. Jason thought about his daddy's badge, about the town's whispers, about her father's shadow. He nodded. Every day. They both laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the only way to keep from crying. And under that willow tree, a promise formed without words. No matter how hard the world pressed against them, they'd find a way to write their own story. It didn't take long before the town began to notice. Jason walking with Claire. Jason's horse tied outside Tom's place. Jason's smile brighter than it had been in years. Whispers grew louder, sharper, until they reached Sheriff Bill's ears like knives. Bill called Jason to the porch one hot afternoon. His voice was hard, his eyes harder. "Son, you're fixin' to ruin everything I've built. You think a sheriff's boy can run with a jailbird's girl and not drag my name through the mud? You stop this, or I'll stop it for you." Jason's chest burned, but he held his tongue. He wasn't ready to fight his father yet, but he wasn't ready to let go of Claire either. That night, he slipped out through the back door, riding through the fields to meet her. Claire was waiting, her eyes heavy with fear. "Your daddy came by," she whispered. "He told my father if I don't stay away from you, things will turn bad." Jason clenched his fists. "You let me worry about my daddy. I don't care what he says." But Claire did care. She had lived too long under the weight of people's judgment not to. She feared that her father, already watched by every eye in town, would be pushed into another fight, another charge, another set of chains. Still, when Jason took her hand, she held on tight. Because even though fear was heavy, love was heavy. Trouble came in the shape of a broken window. The town store was hit one night. Cash stolen, shelves overturned, the kind of crime that made people talk louder than usual. And when the sheriff asked around, all fingers pointed the same way. Tom, Claire's father. Once a thief, always a thief, they said. You can't wash dirt clean. Sheriff Bill came storming into Tom's yard with deputies behind him, guns ready. Jason stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding. Claire cried out, swearing her father had been home all night. Tom stood tall, anger blazing in his eyes, but he didn't fight. Not this time. Bill ordered him hauled to the jail. Jason stepped forward, his voice shaking. Daddy, he didn't do this. You don't have proof. Bill's face turned red. You watch your tongue, boy, or I'll lock you up for siding with a criminal. The crowd gasped, the tension thick as smoke. Claire clung to Jason's arm, her tears falling hot. Please, don't let them take him, she begged. Jason wanted to promise he'd fix it, but in that moment he was powerless. As the deputies dragged Tom away, Jason caught the man's eyes. There was no fear in them, only sorrow. And that sorrow felt like a warning. The storm had only just begun. Jason couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed listening to the cicadas scream in the dark, hearing his father's voice in his head, hearing Claire's sobs echo. By dawn, he made his choice. He rode out to the jail, sneaking around the back. And so he did. He followed whispers, tracked footprints by the riverbank, asked questions in places his daddy wouldn't bother to look. What he found was worse than he imagined. It wasn't Tom who broke the store. It was men tied to the sheriff himself. Deputies who thought no one would notice if the blame fell on a man already branded guilty. Jason's stomach turned. His daddy, the man he admired, the man who raised him, was standing on lies. He rode back to Claire, breathless. Your daddy's innocent, he said. And I can prove it. Her eyes lit up, hope shining through the tears. But behind that hope was fear too, because truth has sharp edges, and Jason was about to cut himself on everyone. When Jason confronted his father, the porch shook. Jason held her close, his heart breaking. Then we'll go. Anywhere, so long as I'm with you. But running away was easier said than done. The sheriff's shadow stretched long, and the town wasn't about to forgive betrayal. By the next morning, posters were up. Jason was branded a traitor, accused of aiding a criminal. His name, once tied to respect, was now dragged through the mud. He and Claire hid in the woods, sleeping under stars, living off stolen bread and creek water. It was freedom and prison all at once. Freedom from judgment, prison of fear. Claire's father sat in jail, silent. Jason visited him one last time, sneaking in through the dark. I'll get you out, he promised. Tom shook his head. Don't waste your life on me. Protect her. That's all I ask. And so Jason tried. But the sheriff's men were closing in. Dogs sniffing, boots stomping, voices calling through the trees. One night, Claire broke down. Maybe we should stop running. Maybe this was all a mistake. Jason cupped her face, his eyes fierce. Loving you ain't no mistake. It's the truest thing I ever knew. Her tears glistened in the firelight, but she nodded. For a moment, they forgot the world. For a moment, love was louder than fear. But the world always catches up. The sheriff's men found them by the river. Torches in the dark, shouts in the night, the sound of guns cocking. Jason pulled Claire behind him, his heart hammering like a drum. Sheriff Bill stepped forward, his voice cold. It ends tonight, son. Come home, or I'll drag you down with him. Jason stood tall, though his knees shook. I won't come back to a lie. I won't turn my back on her. Bill's jaw tightened. For a long moment, father and son stared across the firelight, the silence heavier than the guns around them. Then a voice rang out, Tom's. He had broken free, chains still clanging on his wrists. Leave them be. This is between you and me. Chaos erupted. Shots fired, shouts filled the air. Jason grabbed Claire's hand and ran, the river splashing cold around their legs. Behind them, the crack of gunfire tore the night. When the smoke cleared, Tom lay on the ground, blood on his chest, the sheriff standing over him. Claire screamed, falling to her knees. Jason pulled her close, his own tears blinding him. Tom's last words were soft, broken. Take her far, live free. And then he was gone. Jason and Claire left that night, with nothing but grief in their bones and love in their hands. They rode past the pine trees, past the town that hated them, past the sheriff's shadow. They never looked back. Some say they built a life in another town, quiet and hidden. Some say Jason carried guilt like a scar, but Claire's love kept him alive. And some say Sheriff Bill lived the rest of his days with a hollow heart, haunted by the son he lost and the truth he buried. But around here, when the sun sinks low and the crickets start their song, folks still whisper of Jason and Claire, the sheriff's boy and the prisoner's girl. A love that burned against the rules, a love that ran faster than fear, a love that carried them far from home. And that's how the story ends, the way all front porch tales end, with sorrow, with hope, and with the sound of the river still running on.